We're just getting started, so you didn't miss anything. About how I, an Iranian Jewish believer in Jesus, ended up here sharing with you about Passover today. And so my family is originally from Iran, and I like to tell people that I'm a descendant of Queen Esther, but I can't really back that up. But my mother's family is from the town where Queen Esther's tomb is in Iran. And in my lineage, if I look back and see my family tree, there's a lot of people named Esther in my family. So maybe I'm related to Queen Esther. But I'm a Jewish believer in Jesus, and I'm the 5th generation Jewish believer in Jesus. So the first person in my family to come to faith in Jesus was my great-great-grandfather on my mother's side. And do you guys remember, did I tell you that story about my great-great-grandfather? That he was an elder in the synagogue in Iran, and one day there were a lot of missionaries in Iran at that time. This was in the 1850s or 1870s maybe. There were missionaries from Russia, from England, and from the United States, and they would go tell people about Jesus in Iran. And so one of these missionaries came to the synagogue where my great-great-grandfather was greeting people, and the missionary came to him and said, "Shalom. Did you know that the Messiah has already come and his name is Jesus?" Well, my great-great-grandfather looked at the missionary, slapped him in the face, and kicked him out of the synagogue. But the missionary wasn't discouraged. He waited around afterwards, and as people were leaving, he asked them, "Where does that man live?" And he said, "Oh, he just lives across the street." And so the next day, he went to his home, and he knocked on the door. And because of Iranian hospitality, much like Southern hospitality, my great-great-grandfather welcomed him into his home. He served him some sweet tea. No, not sweet tea. Hot tea. He gave him hot tea, and they got to talking. And the more he shared about why he believed Jesus was the Jewish Messiah, my great-grandfather eventually came to faith in Jesus, and he and his whole family became believers in Jesus. And so that's on my mother's side. And on my father's side, my grandfather was the first one to come to faith in Jesus. And that's because there were missionaries in Iran who started schools. And the education that these schools that the missionaries ran were so good that all of the Jewish families would send their kids to those schools because there was better education than you could get anywhere else. And so along with teaching them how to read, how to write, all of these things in English and in Farsi, they also taught them the Bible. And so that's how my great-grandfather on my father's side, my grandfather on my father's side, came to faith in Jesus. And around that time, my grandfather, they didn't have last names in Iran. They only had first names and then the town that they were from, or if they're son of, my dad's name is John, so my name would be Emmanuel, son of John. And so they didn't have last names, but then they started to give people last names, and people would choose either the name of their town or maybe what they did. And so my grandfather chose the last name Mebasser, which in Farsi means bearer of good news. And it also means the same thing in Hebrew. And so we got that from the verse in Isaiah that says, "Blessed are the feet of those who bring good news." And so I get to have that last name. And when I was growing up, so if we fast forward to when I was born in Tehran, Iran, but I was only 3 months old when the Islamic Revolution broke out. And my parents knew that Islam was not good for the Jewish people, and so we fled and we moved to Tehrangeles, or you might know it as Los Angeles, because there's over 800,000 Iranian people who live in Los Angeles. And so, you have like little Tokyo, and you have little Koreatown, little Ethiopia. Well, we had Tehrangeles. And so that's where I grew up, and my parents helped start a congregation with a pastor who is Muslim and Farsi speaking, and he had become a believer in Jesus. And so half of my congregation growing up were Iranian Muslims who had come to faith in Jesus, and the other half were Iranian Jews who had come to faith in Jesus. So I got to see the reconciliation that can happen because of Jesus. We all were able to get along and to not just get along, but love one another. And so that's how I grew up. But as I was getting older,